But what went wrong?
Unfortunately, things didn't go according to plan. And by this, I mean there were things that were quite unforeseen on my part that made it impossible for me to add value to the commission.
So, Terry Motau has walked away from the Madlanga Commission, my people. Good day and welcome back to Allegedly. We are going to be talking about a very interesting thing which comes with the decision for Advocate Terry Motau to actually say deuces to the Madlanga Commission.
Well, today, as we've just been discussing with Advocate Hoffman, confirmation coming in from the Madlanga Commission in the last 2 hours, in fact, that its former chief evidence leader in the last 24 hours, Advocate Terry Motau, has now stepped down from the organization or from the commission's process altogether.
Why did he do that? How did he do it? When did he know? And what's the juice about this particular commission? There are quite a number of things that we may need to worry about, but we'll talk about them as we continue in this video. Now, let's get straight into it. My people, my people, my people. On the surface, Terry Motau says it's about administrative problems, right? And he says it's about the budget that doesn't stretch far enough. But the timing, the context, and to be honest, the history of similar inquiries actually raise a much bigger question. Did Terry Motau actually step down to protect the integrity of the inquiry? Or let's be honest, was he pushed out by forces that are behind the scenes? We must know the truth because here is what we know currently.
I must give thanks to Justice Madlanga for having appointed me to perform that role. And I understood its seriousness, and it is one that I intended to see through to completion.
But what went wrong?
Unfortunately, things didn't go according to plan. And by this, I mean there were things that were quite unforeseen on my part that made it impossible for me to add value to the commission.
Let me talk about the timeline and the decision of what really happened. So Motau has already confirmed that he made the decision to withdraw on September 11th. This is in 2025. And this, my people, was even before the hearing, the public hearing began. So the commission officially started its work in mid-September, and by late September, Motau had formally requested to leave. Okay, on October the 1st, 2025, the commission then confirmed that Motau stepped down on good terms in inverted commas.
The commission confirms that Advocate Terry Motau SC has stepped down from his role as chief evidence leader and has left the commission on good terms. The commission is grateful for the services rendered by Advocate Motau. Advocate Matthew Chaskelson SC has been appointed as chief evidence leader. The commission will not be discussing this matter any further, as it can only serve to distract it from the task at hand. The commission's priority is to ensure that it is squarely focused on the job, as outlined in the terms of reference, which is to conduct an inquiry into and make actionable recommendations regarding the gravely serious allegations that South Africa's law enforcement agencies have been infiltrated and unduly influenced by criminal syndicates and drug cartels.
They also announced that Advocate Matthew Chaskelson, which is the SC, appointed as his replacement. He was already appointed, if I remember properly, but maybe would take on more work in comparison to what he would have potentially done initially.
Advocate Matthew Chaskelson SC is now the chief evidence leader.
But here's what matters. The inquiry only began its hearing earlier in September, okay? So the commission is obviously expected to release its first report, potentially in December. I'm just worried about Dumisani Khumalo being sick and the postponement of this particular commission. I know they must rest.
To be able to perform a task of this nature, once government says they have given you a budget of 147 million, it's not a lot of money for a task such as this one. And let me explain what I mean by that. You have different working lines or working streams, such as, for example, the procurement of IT services. You have investigators, you have researchers, you have attorneys, you have evidence leaders, you have commissioners themselves. So once you have that budget, there needs to be an indication to say what are the line items, what are the line item allocations for the budget, and why is that important? Go back to the Zondo Commission. The Zondo Commission, one of the misgivings that people have about it, well, rightly or wrongly, people say that commission spent over R1 billion.
A cost escalation.
One, but two, towards the end, people worked for the last 2 months without getting paid.
On these news, this would then mean that Motau left just at the most critical phase of this particular commission. This is where the juice was beginning, in actual fact. So the commission's total budget, right, is for its 6-month investigation, and the amount is actually 148 million rand. So now I want us to break it down so you understand what he was trying to say and what he's trying to communicate about this whole situation. Commissioners, right, evidence leaders and legal researchers in actual fact receive 64 million rand from all that money. Okay, we then come to the support staff. The support staff then gets 5 million. Okay, and then after that we have operational logistics. The operational logistics then take up plus minus 79 million rand. So I want us to look at these numbers closely for you to get a picture of what this means. So 64 million goes to the commissioners and to the legal teams, right? That on its own means 43% of the total budget is going to commissioners and legal teams. Meanwhile, support staff, which is basically talking about the people who keep the machinery running, in actual fact, gets less than 5 million. That's just over 3% of the budget. And then their operational logistics. This is where it gets deep. So this is where the IT systems go in. This is where the investigators and forensic capacity actually goes in. And things like witness protection would actually sit, right? So at nearly 79 million rand, that's how much they spent to make sure these people are well protected, which is important according to me. They're well protected. There are IT systems that can protect their evidence together with forensic capacity. So this sounds quite substantial, let's be honest. But when you consider what the inquiries of this magnitude actually need, the question now becomes, okay, is this money enough? Is it really enough? Are we really going to have enough money to make this thing work or not? So that's not just a minor detail, my people. Inquiries of this magnitude live or die on their operational capacity, which is a challenge. And this is why I think it is important to make sure Madlanga Commission does not collapse, because it can. There is potential for the Madlanga Commission to collapse if we do not focus on the operational capacity.
And maybe let me explain again. Bangane, this taking up such a task is an act of service. I mean, I have no doubt other evidence leaders took a huge pay cut. But speaking for myself, I took a huge one. But I was conscious of the fact that this is a different task. I call these matters love for country matters, where it's not about remuneration. It's about contributing and bringing your expertise on board to assist the country in finding solutions.
The people, the systems, and the technology that process evidence and draft statements are what I call operational capacity. Okay, so if those elements are underfunded or they are poorly managed, the whole process can in actual fact collapse. So no matter what the expertise of those who are doing this are involved, it can collapse because they won't be able to do the functions that they were supposed to do. So Motau now has specifically highlighted exactly these issues. He has highlighted things like delays in the procurement, the under-resourced IT services, the insufficient investigators, and questions about how witness consultations are in actual fact structured. So he actually in actual fact repeatedly mentioned the lessons of the Zondo Commission, where despite a much larger budget, or maybe over a billion rand, which is what we were shocked about when we heard, the staff sometimes went months without being paid, and critical deadlines were in actual fact stretched. So Motau in actual fact wanted to avoid repeating those mistakes at the Madlanga Commission, because he has knowledge of what has happened in a previous commission and does not want to be part of it, my people, ensuring that both the integrity of the evidence and fairness to the team working under him is actually guarded. That is what he said in the interview. But what's really at stake is something completely different. Now, let's be clear, okay? Administrative explanations are credible and they are definitely backed up by facts. So the budget allocations, the operational line item gaps, and the timelines are verifiable, but they also reveal something deeper. They reveal cracks and vulnerabilities in the system itself, let's be honest.
Were you worried that you wouldn't be appropriately remunerated?
No, not at all.
So this inquiry is probing South Africa's most sensitive instructions. So the police, the National Prosecuting Authority, correctional services, and the intelligence services All of these, my people, have histories of systemic problems already. They come from mismanagement to outright capture by political and criminal actors. And the very fact that a commission has to be formed to investigate them shows that the rule of law has already been tested and it has been strained, for goodness sake. So the stakes here are, to be entirely honest with you, very enormous. If operational resources are delayed or they are just generally insufficient, it's not just inconvenience. It can actually be a very strategic advantage for those who want the inquiry to fail. A lot can happen. This then takes me back to what we were told about General Dumisani Khumalo being sick. I'm just hoping it is not part of the inefficiencies of this system that we are currently talking about. So the history tells us that these commissions have been vulnerable to influence. Manipulation can come, and there are leaks that can also be experienced. But there's a pattern, and I want you to always remember, considering the past inquiries, right? There was the Arms Deal Commission, and even the Zondo Commission. They showed us a pattern. Allegations, my people, are often made in public. There's media attention, and prosecutions are really followed up, right? The possibility of political pressure. So he and others have hinted at the challenges of performing such a task in a highly politicized environment, okay? So the commission's work exposes links between criminal networks and political figures, and this is making it neutrally sensitive, just by that. But the political analysts have warned that Motau's resignation could actually jeopardize the commission's independence and lead to further exits, raising critical questions about its future. So even subtle delays like disagreements over processes or minor undermining within the commission could be enough to raise real concerns for someone in his position, But there is the unspoken question. Is he receiving threats? What's going on? Are you receiving threats or not? And there's this speculative angle, threats or safety concerns. Some commentators and analysts, together with myself, am suggesting that Motau may potentially be facing implicit or explicit threats, given the powerful people and the syndicates that are potentially implicated. A senior counsel stepping away to preserve personal safety or maybe avoid compromise is not something that is unthinkable. No official threat has obviously been confirmed, but it remains a plausible fact because of his decision that is so impromptu. But there is a ranking of these possibilities. But here are the consequences of this whole thing, my people. Either way, these consequences are very serious. A leadership change in the middle of a public hearing inevitably is going to slow down momentum. Replacement by Advocate Matthews Chackleson will definitely restore some continuity, which is good for us as we are looking at the commission. But let's be honest, the knowledge gaps and the delays are unavoidable. That is a giveaway. There's also the issue of prosecution capacity. Even if the commission uncovers airtight evidence, the NPA has been flagged as an under-resourced and compromised body in past reports. So Motau himself, in actual fact, mentioned that public confidence will only be restored if prosecutions follow. It's not just about the reports, it's about prosecutions. So maybe he also left because he doesn't want to be part of being one of the people who are called, I know you did something, and there was no arrest after this. But there's a public expectation, and unfortunately, we are engaging as the public because there's no other way. The Madlanga Commission has attracted massive attention, my people. In some ways, even more than the Zondo Commission did at the start. South Africans are watching, they are discussing, and we ourselves, like now, my people, are forming expectations about what justice in actual fact is going to look like. If this inquiry delivers findings but there is no tangible outcomes, there will definitely be public cynicism, and it will deepen and possibly beyond repair. Motau's resignation, my people, is more than one man stepping aside. It's definitely a warning flare. The cracks he highlighted are structural. They are systemic and they are real. If they are not addressed, the Madlanga Commission risks collapsing under the weight of the very system it was designed to investigate. And that would be a tragedy, let's be honest, not just for the commission itself, my people, but for every South African who still believes that wrongdoing at the highest level should have consequences. The public is definitely watching, and the institutions are being tested, and the clock is ticking. Until next time, bye.